Okay, we are all systems go. So we have just about a little over 50 minutes. So we're going to try to get through things as we can. And Jared, are you seeing the life sciences webinar on the screen, or are you seeing the?
We are seeing the presenter view right now.
Okay, let me swap over. There we go. Okay,
Perfect.
Excellent. So just brief, we'll do it just as kind of an agenda for our meeting today. And this is really designed for life sciences, biosciences, biotech organizations, but it's really for just anybody. So if you're outside of that sphere, that's okay. You'll be 95% relevant for you as well today. So we'll go through just quick introductions. We'll be pretty efficient with an interview that we'll have just for about 5-10 minutes. And then we'll go through background with Adaptive Insights, which is actually now Workday Adaptive Planning, as well as Intuitive-Tek Kanos, and that's our firm. We are a consulting firm that is 100% focused on the adaptive solution for the Office of FP&A. And then we'll go through a demonstration of adaptive, have a quick Q&A, and then wrap up. So we should be in and out in the next, like I said, 50 minutes. And if you have any questions, certainly let us know. But this is Matt McDonald. I'm a Senior Director of Enterprise Sales with Intuitive-Tek. Been here about a year, been in the ecosystem though of Adaptive Insights for a better part of 12 years now. I used to work at Adaptive and helped manage their West Coast sales efforts. I'm based here in Silicon Valley, and it's great to have a chance to meet the folks if we get a chance to chat. But again, thank you for joining us, and I'll let Jared introduce himself.
Yeah, hey everyone, my name is Jared. I'm a Senior Solutions Engineer here at Intuitive-Tek. Been with the organization for 2 years now in a pre-sales capacity, but I've spent most of my career on the implementation side. I'll be taking you guys through the demonstration today, and if, like Matt said, if you have any questions, feel free to interrupt me at any point in time.
Yeah, and there's also a chat in the Zoom, so if you have any questions or you want to ask questions that way, you're certainly welcome to. I'll try to address those as we go through the presentation today. And then our other speaker joining us, our distinguished guest, Caroline, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Caroline Lepani, and I'm a Senior Consultant at Intuitive-Tek, and I do implementations, and I've got about 20 years of experience in finance and accounting, FP&A, lots of biotech, and a couple other industries. I've been in manufacturing and some high-tech industries as well. But for the last 15 years, I would say in my career, before I did implementations, I was in the life sciences. And I was a user of Adaptive for about 8 years, and now I've been implementing for almost 3. So.
Awesome, thank you.
Yep.
So just real briefly, who Intuitive-Tek is, I mentioned a couple words at the top. We're headquartered out of Colorado, been around for about 10 years now. Started out as one of the few partners of Adaptive Insights. At the time, it was called Adaptive Planning. And about 2 years ago, Adaptive Insights was acquired by Workday. So they're now actually part of the Workday ecosystem. And so the Workday company, and the product has been rebranded to Workday Adaptive Planning. So our whole entire business and our 50+ employees are completely dedicated to that space, the FP&A, Office of FP&A and Finance. And we really just help our clients evaluate, implement, get trained, and optimize the use of adaptive planning. So that's our role, and we help, today we're just gonna kind of talk about some of the ways, you can potentially use adaptive, assuming a lot of you are in quest of potentially a new solution, or at least better ways of doing things than you maybe have today, or just, really want to get educated on what other options are in the marketplace, and we're happy to be here to do that. So we have been a top partner of Adaptive's for 8 of the last 10 years, including last year, Worldwide Partner of the Year. So we've got a lot of traction and a lot of great momentum with Adaptive, and to that end, we've got over 40 consultants on staff. These are all over North America, which is really our jurisdiction. So we've got consultants in all 3 time zones, and then actually maybe even 4 now. But yeah, so we've got a wide breadth of industry experience as well as experience in implementing the solution. Our consultants are largely made up of former clients, former Adaptive employees like Jared and myself, and then over 75 years of software consulting experience in total. So very exciting, and that's really kind of our business, but a lot of changes in the last couple of years. We actually were also acquired by a company out of Belfast, Ireland called Kainos. So we're actually now a Kainos company, but we are still focused exclusively on what we're doing, and that's helping people get live and using Adaptive Insights or Workday Adaptive Planning. So in terms of Adaptive Insights, the kind of the value proposition, really, this is a survey done last year with about 200 finance leaders. I just like to draw to your attention to the value of Adaptive is really to reallocate finance's time from managing the process to really reporting and analyzing data that matters most. It also is there to enhance collaboration, drive change, and also produce better productivity. It also is faster cycle times and trusted data. So one of the things that a lot of our customers struggle with in Excel is really just kind of managing, making sure that things lined up, or errors are not are fixed, and there's a lot of alignment issues like that. And so we really try to get to the data and allow you to have a trusted level or layer of truth in that the data is going to be absolutely right. And so the acceleration of planning and reporting cycles, driven by real-time roll-ups and reporting, super important. And it's also, again, the single source of truth, but also the ability to drill down into the actual data and across the data. And then, again, making sure that you're confident in that the data is accurate. And so that's what the tools there really to help you become better at your job and to give your company, much better visibility. So one of the things that, it's kind of specific to this space. So with most companies in the 21st century, agility is key to their success, but especially in the dynamic world of life sciences with clinical trials, adhering to evolving regulatory changes, potential acquisitions, and really preparing your organization for the next stage, whatever that might be. You need the right tools and best manage these issues, sometimes all simultaneously. So clients are realizing the transformation taking hold in their reporting process. They're no longer, they don't want to be in a static environment. And really what that means is kind of, you set the budget once, you set things, and then, it's hard to really pivot from that. But rather really what we call an active planning process, where it becomes easy to create, share, and even modify reports. Also, you can create ad hoc reports. So it can be easily integrated with your financials, perhaps your operational data, and provide drill down into the transactional level detail as mentioned before. And it's all really about self-service and making sure that not only finance is independent, but really the users that are, the budget owners, the operational or business leaders that have their own budgets, are able to do things as well and be really independent. And the way you're able to do that is to have a tool that's flexible, that is easy to use, and that's in real time. But you also want to be able to tell a story with those reports, right? Well, the self-service, online reports, the dashboarding, what we call office integration, it's all there in real time. The nice thing about it's all in one database as well. So you're not going from one thing to another, it's all there. So anytime there's a change made at even the lowest level of your plan, it can kind of roll up automatically into the highest level of the organization. And also has ability to take notes in these reports. So if you have people that want to have a little bit more of a story behind the numbers, you can absolutely leverage that capability as well. And just some life sciences, other biotech clients that we've successfully implemented. I think we've got over 45 today of our 500 plus implementations. So we've got quite a list of them, and a lot of them are all shapes and sizes, different levels of maturity in their business. But really leveraging the capabilities of Adaptive. And just some sample customer quotes, kind of the productivity, really the collaboration piece can't be emphasized enough. And that's really the ability for everyone to kind of engage in the process, to own their own plan, but to also understand kind of how things are working and why they're important to the overall business. And then also giving key insights into the business. So kind of looking for those anomalies to the business, making sure that, it's open and everyone has access to what they need to have access to, but also security around things that you don't want them to have access to as well. And just one last slide before we move into the interview and the demonstration. Tango Therapeutics, a couple things on here is that they really, and I want to kind of spotlight, are the reduced time it takes for them to do their planning, to do their reforecasting. They did a survey internally to measure how they were doing things before, and then after they rolled out Adaptive, and they were saving time by up to 50% in a lot of areas. Okay, with that, I'm going to stop sharing, and we're just going to pivot to Caroline. So we'll just spend a couple minutes with her, kind of a little bit of a sit-down chat. And Caroline, you have a very unique background, having been a client at a couple of biotech life sciences companies before, having been on the client side as a primary administrator, even during the implementation, but now helping Intuitive-Tek's life science clients optimize their use of Workday Adaptive Planning. Can you share with others on the call your experience and any learnings you might have picked up during that time in those roles, maybe prior to coming on board with Intuitive-Tek?
Yeah, sure. It's kind of funny because I was in FP&A and accounting, 20 plus years, and my former VP was always like, if you ever leave FP&A, I can see you doing implementing Adaptive, because I love the system, and so that's why I moved into implementing it. And it's pretty typical about, and it doesn't even matter what business you're in. If you're not on some kind of system, you're probably using Excel, and so everybody has the same worries, right? My data's unstable. Oh, do I have a formula broken? Oh, now I got to populate my actuals, migrate them somehow from my system into my Excel spreadsheet so I can do some trends, so I can look at doing my budget or my updated forecast. So I think every industry has the same issue. If you're not on some kind of system, you're using Excel, you're worried about the instability, you're worried about things breaking, you're worried about, especially in biotech, and it doesn't really matter, I think, if you're public or private, like what's my cash runway? So being able to build cash flow out in a system rather than building it in Excel and manually updating it all the time, I think was a big change going from using Excel, which is what I used in the two companies I implemented Adaptive at.
Right.
And the same thing with being able to do easy project P&Ls, because that was a lot of manual work, and sometimes we couldn't even get to them, like just doing it in Excel. So the reporting for projects, and even overall, the ease of reporting out of Adaptive, and especially with the product, or with the add-on of Office Connect. So.
Gotcha. What I was going to say, yeah, and on that topic, what do you feel makes Adaptive a solution that can kind of uniquely help the life sciences clients?
I do think it's mostly being able to plan multidimensionality. So like if you've got a clinical trial, or if you've got multiple clinical trials going on and you've got them in multiple countries, and you can build out the dimensions of that clinical trial in Adaptive and be able to pivot on that data, thinking of like Adaptive has something called a cube sheet, and just think of that like a pivot table on steroids. And, as long as you have that information in your GL as well, you can really match up your actuals to the budget pretty easily with the dimensions in there. So I feel like compared to other industries I've been in or even implemented, that life sciences likes to have a lot of different dimensionality built around their projects. So I think that's the biggest thing. And again, I go back to stability.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay. And I guess lastly, are there sort of any other sort of maybe KPIs, metrics, types of reports that you found that have been really helpful, or kind of things that are key drivers with our clients, or kind of as a user?
Yeah, I think one thing that I've really noticed lately, and I would say over the past year or so, is, again, using that cube sheet, like I mentioned, and I think this is, I've only done it on biotech and not other industries, but I think it'll catch on there, is they like to actually see and plan at vendor. You know, like if you've got a CRO that you're got a clinical trial with, and, you know, it's over 3 years, and it's, you know, CRO number 1, and to be able to see those actuals and then plan against, you know, going forward against that vendor. So I think that's a big thing that I've been seeing lately.
Okay.
So for reporting, that works out great for them, and I think that's the biggest one. And just like, and I don't know if necessarily KPI or metrics, but being able to do the clinical trials and the cash forecasting. Cash metrics are a big deal.
Great. Excellent. Well, thank you very much. So I think with that, we'll just go ahead and pass things over to Jared to give us a tour of Adaptive Insights. I'll assume that most, if not everyone, has not seen Adaptive before. So we'll kind of take it with that in mind. And if, like I said, if you have questions, you can certainly chime in through the audio, or if you would like to chat, you can certainly use the chat Zoom, and we'll try to answer those questions for you as we go through.
Awesome, thanks, Matt. So let me share my screen. And Matt, if you wouldn't mind just giving me sharing rights.
Yep, I think that should. That's,
There we go. All right. Perfect. So thanks, Matt, and thanks, Caroline. And so what I want to do from here is basically take you guys through our biopharma, bioscience adaptive instance. We'll go through some areas like basic expense planning, some of the framework, some planning around personnel, and some clinical trial planning as well. And then we'll tie it all together in the end and show you some of our reporting outputs or capabilities around web-based reporting, board reporting, and also dashboards if you're more of a visual person. So we'll start off here, and you'll see my home page where I have some adaptive news, documentation, and training articles right off the bat. So maybe I'm a new user to Adaptive, so it's helpful to have all that information there, but you'll notice that I do have the ability to select my own homepage at will. So every single end user can kind of dictate what they see when they first come into the system. So for example, I might set it up to land on one of my key dashboards, which displays some charts, graphs, and metrics that are important to me, maybe a key planning template, or even a report which shows me how I'm tracking against my plan. So all of your end users are going to be able to tell Adaptive what they want to see upon coming into the system. Now, from here, the experience really starts within your navigation menu in the top left-hand corner, and you're going to see when I click on that, I have all these options that become available to me. Always keep in mind that depending upon each person's security profile, they might have more or less options available here within this navigation menu. Now, I'll start off with our Sheets, and Sheets is basically going to be the main area of data entry within Adaptive. So think of this as where you're going to do your budgeting and forecasting. They'll basically be like your Excel spreadsheets today, but you're going to see that they have the power and security of a database sitting behind them. Now, right here at the top, we have our P&L, balance sheet, and cash flow. So we can easily set up the integrated financial statements. But then outside of that, we can really build in as many detailed sheets or schedules that we might need for planning purposes. So for example, some operating expense planning, some planning around clinical trials, some detailed personnel planning, and then maybe any other source of revenue that we might have as well. Now, with that being said, let's just jump into our operating expense template first. And once I get down here, you're going to see that I have the ability to plan across all of my different GL accounts. I can even incorporate different hierarchies depending upon how that's configured within my ERP. I can easily plan across my different time granularities, but most importantly, I'll have the ability to easily plan and consolidate the information across my organization using this level structure dropdown here. So in the current state right now, we're viewing the information at the total company view. But as I expand that, you're going to see that this is essentially going to be set up to mimic my organizational hierarchy or how I roll up the information today. And you'll notice I can have this tiered structure and structure it within as many hierarchies as I want. Now, looking at the data itself, you're also going to notice two different shades of values. So we have some green values here in FY 2018. We have some black values starting in 2019. Whenever you're seeing green and adaptive, you always know that that's representing your actuals, your historicals that has been imported to date within the system. Whereas all this black information here is always going to represent your plan, budget, or forecast information. Now, up top, this is going to be our version dropdown. And basically, we can house and archive as many versions as we want. We can securitize them so that we can hide or lock down the information from certain end users depending upon the scenario. And then basically, we can report against these at any point in time through one of our reporting capabilities. So whether it's through the web browser, our board reporting, or dashboards, as you'll see later on. Now, with that being said, let's just go into one of these lower level departments as if we're one of these budgeting managers. So we'll open up our level structure dropdown. We'll go into R&D, and maybe I want to work within this executive research area. Now, you'll see once we get down here to this view, we almost have a second layer of security where we have the ability to control exactly what GL accounts or line items we want to give access to our end user base, and then which cells we want to lock down because those values are being driven from another detailed sheet or schedule somewhere else within the model. So for example, right at the top here, in a very common situation across all of our customers, payroll, taxes, and benefits. Typically, that's something that we're building up at a really granular level by employee or by position, and it's usually going to house sensitive information, so not everyone might need to have access to that. So we can provide them exactly with the GL account total by month, and then if they do have that appropriate security access, you'll see they can drill into any one of these cells, maybe January 2019 for salaries and wages, and then I can explore that cell. And here I can actually trace it back to the individual employee level of detail. So here's all my employees for executive research. I can even see the exact research projects that each person is working on. Now, with that in mind, you'll also notice there's a few duplicate rows. So for Florence Wong here, for Valerie Moreau, they're working across different research projects. So that's why we're seeing their different salaries or their different allocations for each one of those. And within this Cell Explorer window, it's very dynamic, where I can trace the information back to the actual planning sheet. I can view the audit trail to see any changes that have been made. But I also have the flexibility to toggle back and forth between months to see if there's any new hires or terminations within my personnel plan. Now, as we come back, all these white cells here, that's just Adaptive's way of saying that's open for data entry, and you can type in your values on a monthly, quarterly basis, or even annual basis, depending upon your preference. But as an example, maybe we're coming down here and we have something like lab supplies, and we just need it to be a flat $1,000 month over month, or clinical studies, and we want that to be something. So we can just type in $1,000 here. And then if I want to just push that forward, I can right click, say copy forward, copy to end, and you'll see that carries all the way throughout my plan months. Now, with that being said, you'll notice that we have these fiscal year columns with a blue font, which basically just means that's a subtotal. But I do have the flexibility to come in here and say, you know what, clinical studies actually needs to be $25,000 for the year. And now I have the ability to pick and choose from these different spread mechanisms that Adaptive provides. So rather than having to use a customized Excel formula, now we have 5 to 6 options that we can just pick and choose from. So a few examples might be proportionally these custom calendars, or my personal favorite and the one I see most used often is going to be proportionally using prior year values. And that's basically going to reference all the seasonality from the prior year and then spread it throughout the current plan months. So we'll see how it's populating all into these first two here. Now, within your expense plan, a lot of times you're going to have some more detailed formulas or some more driver-based accounts. So whether it's headcount-based, percent of revenue, whatever it may be, all of those formulas can be incorporated within Adaptive. But as an example, something like my telephone expense here. We see when I click in that cell, there's a formula in the top left-hand corner. And one thing to keep in mind with Adaptive is that all these formulas are always going to be written in full words versus being cell references. So it's very easy to understand exactly where that data is being pulled from. So for example, if I drill into this $160 here for January, I can see it's just taking the amount of the FTEs that I have for this department, and then it's multiplying it by some global assumption for telephone per head. And that's how we're getting to this monthly dollar amount. Now that global assumption there, that's something that's going to be unique to Adaptive. So global assumptions give us the flexibility to just update a value one time at the total company level, and then we can see it instantaneously ripple throughout our plan. So for example here, maybe telephone got more expensive, and we want to update that and see how it impacts our whole plan. So first thing I might do is come back here and pivot on my telephone account. So let's just right click and say view by level. And now we can see what the current state is for this telephone account. And then we might go into our assumptions area here. And let's just bump up that $40 per head to be $1,000 per head. And then we'll push that all the way throughout our plan. And now as soon as we come back to our expense sheet, we can just give this a quick refresh, and you'll see that that change ripples throughout all of those departments without us having to go through one by one to make that change. Now, let's go back to executive research. And one more thing I want to call out here on the operating expense planning, because I know Caroline kind of alluded to that, is the ability to add in additional detailed notes or granularity, such as vendor-related information. So maybe something like our office supplies or repairs and maintenance. Maybe we're working with different vendors throughout the year, and we want to list that out within this particular departmental plan. So I do have the flexibility here to right-click on, let's just say office supplies, and then I can add a split where I can enter in vendor 1, vendor 2, and as many different vendors as I'm working with throughout that year. Let's just add in one more. And now you'll notice that I can type in my values. They all roll up to that 1GL account. And in me adding all this detail, I'm not affecting any of my formulas that may have been set up above or below that account line. Right. So that's a little bit around some basic operating expense planning, and it consolidates all up to our total company numbers. But from here, let's take a look at some more detailed planning on the expense side of the house. So personnel in particular, that's usually the area where we're seeing the largest portion of the expense budget. So let's dive into that sheet in more detail. So I'll come over here. We'll open up our personnel sheet. And this particular sheet here, this is where we're getting all of those payroll, taxes and benefit values that you saw in the prior view. And you'll notice here, we're able to incorporate as much or as little detail as we want for each one of our employees. So for example, I have certain fields here where I can just type in information directly. So comments or justifications as far as why I need this person at that point in time, or why are they retiring, for example. But I've also set up these predefined pick list options for certain fields to make my life easier, to make my end user base life a little bit easier as well. So something like title, employee grade, which can be used to do a lookup against their pay rate, residence for tax with different states, different countries, even health benefit plans as well. So those are really helpful from two different viewpoints. One, it eliminates a lot of the duplication and data entry. But two, as you're making certain selections here, we can actually have certain assumptions or calculations that get triggered off depending upon what you select. So for example, residence for tax. When I select different states, different countries, that tells Adaptive exactly what rate and what max to use for tax purposes. Health benefits here, I have 3 generic options, but of course we can incorporate your detailed health benefit plan, and each one of those can have monthly dollar amounts associated with it. Now, those things that I'm alluding to, those taxes, the benefit amounts, that's not typically something we see that we're going to give access to our end users. So again, we might separate that out as a global assumption area on its own sheet. And here you'll see I have all of my health benefit plans month over month. I might even want to account for an uplift here in January 2020. I have all my federal taxes, all my state taxes as well. So we can manage these centrally, either in finance or HR, depending upon who should have access to that, push them into our personnel planning sheet, and then in combination with all of our user inputs, we can calculate our expenses and our headcount on a row-by-row basis. Now, as I'm kind of scrolling over here, and you kind of saw this on the expense planning sheet, there was multiple rows for certain people. And the reason for that is we're in R&D here, executive research. So most likely these people are working across different projects throughout the year, and we want to incorporate that allocation within this model. Bear with me, I think we just got a chat.
That was just me, Jared, letting people know that they can use this as a forum for questions. So
perfect. Just want to make sure I didn't miss a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we do have these percentages on a month-to-month basis, as I was referring to, and that's just basically going to take everyone's expenses and their headcount, and it's going to allocate it out accordingly to these different projects that they might be working on. Now, with personnel information, typically what we see is that we're either flat file uploading or we're going to directly integrate with your payroll system. And we bring that data into Adaptive, and this is going to be your starting point. But as you'll see, all this information is completely editable, and we can add to it as we need to. So for executive research, maybe we want to add in one new employee and want to allocate their time across different projects. So I can simply add in a new row. Let's just say this person is going to be the new VP. We'll assign them to New York State. And I'll just give a start date of today. 40 hours per week. Plan 2. And then $100,000 per year. And you'll even notice I can incorporate individual pay raises if I want to. But here, I want to split their time. So now I can just split that row as many times as I want. Let's just do 3 splits. And define what projects they might be working on. And then I'll just do a 1/3 split across each one of those. Now, since Adaptive is built into an in-memory database, as soon as I save that information, everything at the GL account level is going to update accordingly. So we can just come back to our expense sheet here, scroll over to my start month of June 2020. We can drill in here. And you'll see that TBA just automatically added into my plan. But in addition to that, I can also drill into any one of these rows on the personnel sheet to see what calculations are going on behind the scenes. So let's just right click on Research Project 1 here, go into row details, and you'll see all the calculations for that person. So let's scroll over to the start month, and you'll see in June, everything is kicked off. So the departmental or project allocation, salary, maybe a recruiting fee upon the first month of employment, and then all associated taxes here. And you'll even notice that we have something like our FUTA, which is automatically cutting off in September based upon my cumulative salary, based upon the tax max as well. Okay. Right. Now I'll pause there. Caroline, is that pretty common where you're seeing personnel expenses allocated across projects, for example, like we have here within this demo instance?
Can you hear me? I just took myself off mute.
Yep, I can hear you.
Yeah, this, what I also see is more so let's take the whole department. So like if this Department of Executive Research, they'll have 1% for the whole department allocated to projects. So we wouldn't split the rows, like let's say Florence Wong would just have 1 row and say her pay rate $52,530. And then we feed it into a cube sheet that then allocates it across, all 7 projects or however many you have.
Sure.
So it's either this or the other way. I think I only have 1 customer that wants to do it by person. The rest are like, yeah, there's a lot of detail to maintain, so they do it allocated out by department.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, so you do have both options. Obviously, this is a little bit more granular route, so we can do it on a person-by-person basis, or like Carolyn said, we can always do a more high-level total departmental allocation like that. All right. So that is a little bit around operating expense planning, personnel planning. From here, let's dive into a few examples of clinical trial planning. And I have 2 different sheets that I really want to walk you through. I'll start off first on this sheet here. And let me just get the other one opened up a while. So we'll just, perfect, there we go. So around clinical trials, you're going to see that, this model is going to be very robust. It's going to allow us to do a lot of different things. So for example, we might have different clinical trials throughout the year across, different projects, different customers. And you'll notice that I have the ability to build in this approval system. So we have certain clinical trials that are approved, certain are pending. So that can actually dictate whether that information is going to flow through into our P&L, into our balance sheet, our cash flow. Now, we can also allocate this across our different research or development projects. But most importantly, you see that we can plan and report in different currencies. So if you're working with different people throughout the globe, obviously you might want to do that within their local currency. So this is going to give me the flexibility to do that here. Now also, I have the ability to plan across my different phases. And we have the ability to shift these different start and end dates that we expect those phases to be worked within. So for example, phase 2 here, we're allocating this across different projects. I can shift these dates around, and that'll automatically shift this cash within that time period. So for example, if we dive into this one here, US dollar development project 1, here are the dates, here's the amounts. We go into the row details, similar to what we did there with the personnel model. You're going to see that it automatically flags that when it's an active trial, and it takes that cash required and it spreads it throughout the life cycle of that particular trial. So one view here of clinical trials. A second one would be like this program trial expense detailed sheet. So similar concept here, but this is going to allow us to do things like enter in values on a month-to-month basis. It also incorporates something like, if we want to prepay something, what's that amount? What's the prepaid date? And then you'll see that we can easily track this across different categories, different activities, and then different vendors as well. Now, one thing you'll notice here is this GL account column, and we have different fields within this. So clinical studies, lab supplies, manufacturing, and so on. By having this here, this essentially is going to tell Adaptive how we want to link over that information to our P&L, to our expense template. All right. Caroline, anything you'd add there on vendor-related planning before we do shift gears into more reporting and dashboarding?
No, I've done similar to these. How you're more similar the one that you're showing right now than the first one, as well as one again going back into the cube sheet, because then if I do it in the cube sheet, we can pull in actuals as well.
Sure, sure. Great, thanks.
Yep.
All right. So that's a quick introduction into the planning, the budgeting within Adaptive, but I want to tie it all together and talk a little bit about our version drop down here, a little bit about reporting as well. So I have all these different scenarios, but how can I easily compare them at any point in time? And that's all going to be done through our reporting capability. So let's just go into this expense BVA example. And you'll see with this reporting capability, we can set it up and structure it any way that we want. So we might have different GL accounts, metrics down the left. You'll see I have multiple versions for comparison purposes. I have this percent variance, this research column with conditional formatting and flags built in based upon parameters that I've set up. And it's nice because this same report can be viewed easily across any department within my organization. So right now we're at total company, but I have the flexibility to drill into any one of these departments for more detail. Now, as I'm looking at something like this, I might be scrolling down and we might hit something like other T&E where we have a gigantic variance, might be more of an extreme example, but you want to drill into that and see exactly what's going on behind the scenes. So first thing I might do is just click on the account itself and say drill into level. And you'll see that this shows me exactly what departments within my organization are overspending or have a variance. And we have executive research here, which clearly something is going wrong. So now I can click into my budget value just to validate that. But I can also drill into this 2.6 million here and then go into my transactional detail and see that everything's pulling through correctly. And as I'm scanning through my transactions, we have this $2,600 lunch, and we can see it was accidentally keyed in as 2.6 million. So clearly that's a mistaken entry, and I can see where that variance is stemming from with having this information behind the scenes. Now, that's going to be obviously an extreme example, but we might spot some variances in the report, and you want to call that out, either for yourself or for that departmental manager. So let's just return back to our original view. And then let's go into executive research. And now I can come down, and on that other T&E line, I can just right click and add in my commentary. So variances due to mistaken entry, for example. And you'll see that my note can show up down here, or if I prefer a different view, I have the ability to say, you know what, show that as a column. I can see it over here to the right, or I can even show it directly underneath the GL account itself. And along with the data, all of those notes are going to aggregate up to my total company view as well. Now, before we shift gears, take a look at the charts, graphs, visualizations. I do want to show you how we can create something like this from scratch, or maybe create a project-related report by employee, for example. So I'm going to go into our reports here. And I can create this either as a personal report or shared report, depending upon if I want to publish this out. For this purpose, I'll just create it as a personal report. But this is going to be our interface here. So what do you want in the rows, columns, and parameters will be your drop-downs on the report itself. And maybe here we want to see employee-related expenses by project. So I might go into my account section, and you'll see, of course, it has my GL info, but it also has any metrics, any information from my other models as well, right within this one location. So we'll go into the modeled section, we'll go into personnel, and I'll just grab some of these expenses like salary, commission, for example, and bonus, and maybe recruiting fee. Now I might want to compare that across projects. So now we can go into my dimensions here and grab all these projects that I want to compare. And then I have the flexibility to view this across different versions as well. So we can come in here and say, let's take a look at my working budget. Let's also layer in this budget long range plan and anything else that I might want to see as well. And then I'll incorporate our time period and say, show me this for FY 2019. And after everything checks out here, now I can run this report. So for the working budget, here's what it looks like across these different research projects. I have these accounts here, and you'll see that I can actually expand that and see the specific employees underneath that. So quick intro there into reporting from a consumption and a creation standpoint. But then we also do have dashboards, charts, graphs, and visualizations for the more visual people as well. So let's just come into our dashboard section. And with dashboards, you can set up different views depending upon the group or person that you want to show it for. So for example, I might have something like this for my executive team, where I can layer on as many different data points and KPIs that I want. I can add as many tabs as I want and structure it in any fashion. But for example, here, we have important financial metrics like contribution margin, cash burn, scorecard view, even these different waterfall effects down below as well. So it's helpful because this could be my landing page that I alluded to in the beginning of the demonstration. But then as I'm looking at this, if I have a question, I can drill into anything to get more detail. So for example, cash burn. If I want to drill into this by project, I can simply click on it, drill into that project dimension, and then I get the breakdown here down below. That can be done on any one of these. So if we're looking at our FTE distribution, I can drill into that into level or department. So R&D, let's first drill into level, for example. I get the breakdown here. We can see most of it's coming from executive research. And then again, from there, we can drill into the project detail as well. So very flexible, very dynamic as far as the drill paths that we can create. Also, from a consumption standpoint, you can view it like this, but if you are more of a PowerPoint person, you're going to see we have our presentation mode here, where I can flip over to this, maybe take this into my monthly board meetings, and then I can go through this tab by tab, slide by slide and view each one of these metrics individually. All right. So, quick intro there into dashboards, quick intro into Adaptive around the budgeting, planning, reporting. I hope this was helpful. And with that being said, I'm going to open up for questions and see if anyone has any questions on anything we went through today.
Doesn't sound like it, but that's okay.
Yep.
Yeah, hopefully this was helpful and you got a good, at least, overview of the adaptive planning solution. And we've recorded this, so we'll send out the recording for posterity. And if you want to share it with other colleagues, and then also we'll send the slides. But we're more than happy to engage with you one-on-one. So if you'd like to do a follow-up, feel free to let me know. You can respond to my email or give me a call. But again, thank you for everyone joining today, and we look forward to working with you. Have a good day.